This is the assignment, and it's already working, and you're going to rework it. Okay, so you're going to make it look the same, but you're going to use different code. Plus, you're going to add a hover effect. You're going to add that, and you're going to rewrite this code. And here again, there are many ways of approaching this. I have 2 samples for you, and you can rewrite his CSS if you want to. You're going to need to add the class for the hover effect. And you're going to be using the same concepts that we have learned. And I have a lot of information on the assignment handout also. I am currently looking at the sample file for the assignment illustrating the hover event. All right, this is the hover event or the hover event method. Same thing. The book calls it an event method. It's technically an event. All right, let's take a look at it. Here in my HTML, I have an H2, and underneath I have a div. I have another H2, and underneath I have a div. And actually, if we take a look at the browser view, there's my H2. And notice when I'm putting the cursor over it, there's an effect. Now, we can do this with CSS. I understand that. But I want you to learn how to use the hover event, which does this also. All right, so let's take a look at the hover event. The hover event is similar to a click event, except that it takes 2 functions. So here's our first anonymous function, which essentially is the mouse over. So a hover is a mouse over and a mouse out. So the first function handles the mouse over. The second function essentially handles the mouse out. So whatever we wanted to happen when the mouse goes over, that code needs to be written inside the first function. Also, whatever we want to happen when the mouse goes out, it needs to go over in the second function. Now, I understand that this concept of mouses is going away due to our touch devices. Anyway, this is in the book. We're learning it. All right, let's take a look at our CSS. In my CSS, here I have a class called effect. And what I'm doing is I'm setting the text decoration to underline. So this is a CSS class. So, and it is not being used yet. It's just sitting there. It's sitting there in my embedded style sheet. So what I'm doing is in my first function, I'm using the add class method to add that class. All right, now, because we have multiple H2s in our document, I cannot use the H2 selector. Actually, if I were to put H2 in here, and I need to put quotations around it, and I were to actually put H2 in here, what's going to happen is that this is going to apply to every H2 in my document. And if you notice, there are 2 H2s, so when I put my cursor over one of them, it's going to happen to both of them. So this is the concept of the this theory. All right, we identify the selector, and there are multiple instances of that selector. And we use the this keyword to identify what instance we want that thing to happen. All right, so let me undo all this and get my thises back. No pun intended there. All right, so whatever H2 I click on, whatever H2 I click on. Now this is part of the assignment. All right, you need to add this in the assignment. Now, I would also like to draw your attention to another event in jQuery, which looks very similar to the hover and acts very similarly also, except that rather than hovering, it is a click. All right, this is the toggle event. Here again, it takes 2 functions. The first function executes for the first click. The second function executes for the second click. So we can click and have something happen. We can click and have something happen again. This is a toggle. Toggles mean turn it off, turn it on. Now, this is deprecated. This is removed from jQuery. If you want to use this, you need to have notice the framework that I have up here. You need to have an older framework. I have 1.8.3. So if I were to load this, all right, and what I'm doing is I'm clicking this down here. All right, I'm toggling a color with a click, not a mouse over. All right. Okay. Now, the assignment is based on the example in the book. The example in the book, he's doing some hiding and showing using the toggle event. All right, so you're going to take that example right from the book, and I'll give you the code. You are going to rework it so that you do not use the toggle event. All right, there's several ways of approaching this. So essentially, you're going to be working with classes, and you're also going to be working with something that we're introducing in this class, which is called the toggle effect method. Now, one thing I would like to point out to you, there are three different methods, three different things in jQuery that have the word toggle in it. One is toggle class. All right, these are all methods. One is technically called an event method. One is technically called an effect method. All right, they're all tied into a selector, so it's selector.method. There is toggle class, which essentially toggles a class. Toggle class takes a class name as a parameter. There is the toggle event method, which takes two parameters, which we just saw. I mean, it takes two functions as parameters, which we don't use anymore. Now we are going to learn the toggle effect method. All right, now, and we're looking at effects next week also, but these are also covered in this chapter. He kind of goes back and forth with his things. All right, so what this does, it actually toggles between the hide and show effect. So these are what are called effect methods that are built into jQuery. So the hide effect is essentially setting the CSS display property to none. The show effect is technically setting the CSS display property to block. So what we're doing, we're toggling back and forth between the display property values from show to block, hide to block, hide to block. All right, so let's take a look at what we have here in this example. We have our same scenario with our FAQ, our callies here. All right, so let's take a look. Here, now a little bit different. All right, now, when I click, notice the plus sign changes to minus. When I click, there we go. All right, now, here again, there are several ways of setting this up. What developers do, they load the page with the plus sign is already configured as a background image, and the content underneath is already hidden. Now there's two ways of doing that. You can do that with jQuery by setting a class, or you can do that with CSS. All right, my example uses jQuery, the book example uses CSS. Whichever you want to do is fine. All right, but that's the theory. The theory is we start with a background image, and that's the plus sign. Then, when we click, we're changing the class. All right? We're adding a minus class. Then, when we click again, we're removing the minus class. So technically, that plus class is always there. The only difference is when we click, we're adding a minus, and what that's doing, it's taking precedence. So take a look at the CSS to understand how this is working. We're adding this class. There's already another class. You can have two classes for one element, and this is taking precedence because it's added second in the code. All right, now we're also displaying the content. Now that content is underneath. All right, so we're referring, the click action is happening on the H2. We're referring to what is underneath it. And we do that by using next. All right, All right, so let's take a look at our code. All right, there's my H2. The H2 gets the action of the click. There's the div. All right, so the way I have this set up, I'm hiding the div. All right, that's the hide effect method. And I'm adding the class image plus. So the class is being added. All right, let's take a look at my CSS. All right, there's my image plus class. All right, and there's my image minus class. So we're set. These are background images. All right, now look how nice this is. 2 lines of code. There's my selector, H2. When I click, I'm calling a function. All right, what's this function doing? It is manipulating this. What is this? This is the instance of the H2 that I'm clicked on. Dot next. Next what? Next div. That's the div underneath it. Toggle. This is the toggle effect. The toggle effect toggles between hide and show. So if it's already hidden, we're going to show it. And then the next time, if it's already shown, then when I click it, it's going to toggle back to hide. All right, then what am I doing? This dot toggle class. All right, now notice this refers to the H2. We're toggling the class of the H2 because the background image is set for the H2. So remember up here, here's my H2. I'm adding the class image plus. Now I'm toggling the class image minus. Well, what do I mean by toggling that class? It wasn't added. You're right, it wasn't added. So the first time that I click, I'm adding it. Second time I click, I'm taking away. And when I take it away, what do? We see the plus class. That's been there all along. It's just that we're overwriting it when we're adding the minus class. Now, take a look at what we're doing here. The toggle class is attached to the H2, so it's this dot method. The toggle effect is attached to what's underneath the H2. So the H2 is this dot next. All right, so if you can't just say this dot div, all right, or this dot toggle, it's not going to work. You got to say what thing. And because there are multiple instances on the pages, we work with the concept of this and next. This is the assignment, and it's already working, and you're going to rework it. Okay, so you're going to make it look the same, but you're going to use different code. Plus, you're going to add a hover effect. You're going to add that, and you're going to rewrite this code. And here again, there are many ways of approaching this. I have 2 samples for you, and you can rewrite his CSS if you want to. You're going to need to add the class for the hover effect. And you're going to be using the same concepts that we have learned. And I have a lot of information on the assignment handout also.